Good morning to you, Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. The first of two that I'm going to produce today because we have a lot to talk about and a system that is going to impact land areas. So this one I'm recording at around 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and then I will do another video update later this evening to reflect any changes, etc., and talk about the impacts of what will be coming up with potential tropical cyclone number 9, see it right down here. This means that we will almost certainly have our 9th tropical cyclone, either a depression or a storm of the season. And as of the 11 a.m. advisory package, it's located out here to the east of the Windward Islands, the Lesser Antilles. As a whole, watches and warnings posted for portions of the area, as this is expected to move through the Caribbean Sea over the next few days. It's moving west at 17, and the winds are about 35 miles per hour. If we go and look at the discussion, this is important, the forecast discussion for our system here. The first paragraph talks about the reasoning behind upgrading this, so to speak, from 91L here to a potential tropical cyclone, and basically talking about how it's become better defined, and that the cluster of strong convection is formed just west of the center, and therefore they are looking at this as a potential for becoming a tropical storm before reaching the Lesser Antilles. Next paragraph here talks about the steering ideas over the next few days, trying to get my colors right, and generally speaking, it's a tightly clustered guidance package, and that should put it through the Eastern Caribbean over the next day or day and a half, in 3 days into the Central Caribbean, and by days 4 and 5 over to the Western Caribbean. So we may be dealing with this for a few days, unless, as we talk about in this paragraph from forecaster Jack Bevan, Dr. Jack Bevan, unless the Euro and the GFS have their way, which degenerate this into an easterly wave over the Caribbean. But the statistical models indicate favorable conditions and therefore strengthening to a hurricane here by days 4 and 5. We can worry about this part later. It's this part over here, the next 24 hours or so to 36, that I'm concerned with, because it's going to be moving through, into and through, etc., the Eastern Caribbean. So let's look at the wide shot, upper level trough here, tropical wave, soon to be TD9, tropical storm Harvey, whatever. And Recon will be out here barring any mechanical issues to check this out. So we will have more info later today. And then we have 92L, which we can talk about as well. And then 93L back here. So the tropics are loaded for bear. And this should be no surprise to anyone. So let's look at another graphic I want to show you real quick. It's called a Graphicast, mainly pointing out the trough of low pressure here and this tropical wave that it's interacting with, digging around like that, and this entire mess here is going to move off to the west-northwest with time, bringing some squally conditions through portions of the greater Antilles, not related to soon-to-be TD9 or Harvey, whichever the case may be, off to the east. This will then be moving through the region later on, but I just wanted to point this out for any marine interests down in the greater Antilles and vicinity. All right, so looking at the vorticity signature, let's get rid of that first of all. Come on, work with me. Why does it keep doing that? Goodbye. The vorticity signature for today, not much going on with that system in the greater Antilles, so we won't worry about it too much. And you see how it's kind of elongated, whereas this potential TD tropical storm, more round in appearance, very round, as is the energy bundling there with 92L. And that's what we're looking for here. This shows vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, and indeed these two systems are lining up pretty well. And 93L, a much larger envelope of energy, taking a little bit longer, more dry air out this way. So we'll worry about this in the coming days. I did want to point out that we have finally lost the vorticity, the energy, the front over the southeast and into Texas, at least most of Texas, southeast Texas anyway. And that is good, because we need that to hold on until the eclipse on Monday. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. Just program note for you. So let's take a look at the close-up still image from the visible satellite. And so this is the GOES floater, but this is not the GOES 16. I like this because I can look at the lat long, and it's just easy. Once the GOES 16 moves into the floater, it becomes operational, and it doesn't say experimental anymore, it'll be easier to access from the National Hurricane Center page. This is nice because it really helps me with the lat long on here, so that's what we're going to stick with. Center of circulation right in here, convective activity off to the west, as the discussion mentioned. And so what about impacts? Well, there's Barbados, and this is going to move just north of due west, the center of circulation. So a lot of this activity here going to reach the Windward Islands and the Lesser Antilles as a whole over the next day or so. Before we get into the geography of the area and impacts, let's see what we know here. We got a pretty good band coming around the north and west side. These chunks of thunderstorms, these clusters, it's not extremely well organized, and certainly it's weighted on the west side. If I just sort of start over here, most of the energy is on the west side because it's being pushed fairly fast here by these easterly trades, the overall surge coming out from the east, kind of making it a little lopsided. But don't let that fool you, especially you folks here in Barbados. Very, very heavy rainfall with these big clusters, deep tropical thunderstorms, and this will be reaching the area tonight. So that's a problem because in the overnight hours, what are people doing? They're normally sleeping. You're going to have very heavy rainfall impacting the area through tonight and then tomorrow. And in fact, if we go and we look at a geographic spread of the area, Barbados, the system is sitting out here roughly, the center, but all that weather is just going to move in, kind of like this over the next several hours through tonight. Barbados will be first in line, and even up as far north as Dominica, and of course Martinique, St. Lucia, down through probably Grenada. I don't think much can be expected in Trinidad and Tobago. If we go back and look at the SAT picture, those are farther down to the south and west here. And this is fairly far to the north, and it's not a large system. So I believe that you all are going to be okay from any direct impacts from any of these feeder bands or anything. But my main concern is where this whole blob of energy is headed, and that's in that general direction right there, maybe a little bit more to the north. So again, you folks in the eastern Caribbean, from Dominica down through Grenada, squally weather, very heavy rainfall, gusty winds, maybe to tropical storm force, 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts. These are the things that experience, I haven't been down there to experience these tropical storms, but in the ones that I've been in that are developing, that is generally what you can expect. And it's moving fairly quick, so it should pass through the area and into the eastern Caribbean within the next 24 hours or so. So be ready for that, all right? Especially since this will start at night. Upper level winds, just real quick here, there's that upper trough. Generally speaking, upper level winds are all easterly here, flowing with everything that's moving out of the tropics and through the tropics. So everything's aligned. It's just things are moving kind of fast. And so we have sort of this vertical shear coming in from the east just a little bit. But overall, upper level winds, and especially if we look at it with the contours, are quite favorable down in the Caribbean and the tropical Atlantic. See this right here, all this green? Definitely light upper level winds, but definitely a very vigorous upper trough here. Another upper level low. These are called tropical upper tropospheric troughs, or TUT, T-U-T-T, and these can be, depending on where they are placed in relation to a system, a big helper or a big hindrance, and they can chew these systems up. For now, it does look like we have this band of general favorable upper level winds through the tropics. So I would expect that 91L, TD9, whatever, will become our next tropical storm, especially looking at the upper ocean heat content. Right now it is located right in here, and it's going to be moving towards higher and higher upper ocean heat content, and especially so as it moves towards the western Caribbean. And we can zoom in and take a look at this even closer. Of course, very high values, well, high enough, higher over to the west as you would expect, So this has plenty of fuel. The limiting factor apparently is going to be how much dry air is in this vicinity over the next few days. And that's going to be really interesting to watch. The intensity forecast, I'm not even going to try to venture a guess with this one, because it's tough going against two global models that say this degenerates into nothing versus these statistical models. But you know what? Let me just say this, go back to the picture. Because it is small, I will venture a guess that if it doesn't die off soon, maybe the global models don't resolve it as well because it doesn't take up that much room in their grid, if that makes any sense. The smaller these features are, the harder they are for the global models to see them, quote unquote. I don't know how to explain that, but that's just what I have observed over my years of doing this. So we shall see. Maybe if it keeps on surviving, it'll outdo the global models. So something to look for. Meanwhile, the track, very tightly clustered, as Dr. Bevan mentioned in the discussion, through the Caribbean, towards Central America, so we need to keep a close eye on this. As it moves through the Caribbean, depending on how large it gets, most of the models keep it far enough south of Jamaica, but let's just see what happens on that north side in terms of any interaction with squalls, etc. Remember, folks, you don't have to have a direct hit to have problems. One of our viewers, and the word fan, I'm not a rock star. I mean, come on. What do you call follower, whatever, Andre down in Jamaica. And there are others, but Andre is very persistent in keeping up with this. Even in the off season, he's very in tune. And he tells me about what happens when these tropical waves move through with very heavy rainfall. So we need to watch that to see if any of this interaction with the southern part of Hispaniola and Jamaica takes place with the threat of potential heavy rain. The intensity forecast, again, this is really interesting. The statistical models, and then the specific HWRF here, a hurricane model, indicating steady strengthening. So that's very, very impressive there. And then your global models, and then the HMON, which is the GFDL replacement, say, wah, wah, wah. So we shall see. But again, in the first 24 to 36 hours, the potential is there for this to reach maybe even moderate tropical storm of 50 knots or so. So you guys in the Windward Islands there, and gals, need to be ready for that, okay? Seriously, don't take this lightly, especially the rainfall part. Dry air, interesting that that could be an issue. In the Eastern Caribbean, certainly not. Very little dry air, no Saharan air layer to speak of. But you can get dry air at the mid-levels from different sources. Just sinking air dries it out, subsidence. Out in the Eastern Atlantic, though, still a very large Saharan air layer presence. And this will come and go as our tropical waves interact with that. And let me just say this, and this is pointing out the obvious. Okay, so we don't get development south of the Cape Verde Islands, and then you have a storm to track, assuming that it hits the United States or elsewhere, for 10 days. You know what I mean? So this stays sort of under the radar, as these are doing. The farther west they get before they develop, the more likely they are to impact land. So you need to keep that in mind before you say, well, nothing's developing out there, it's dead. Well, it's not dead, it's just these things are moving in quietly, so to speak, and positioning themselves, not on purpose, it's just the way it is. I mean, look, and I'll get off this soapbox in a second, look how far west this is as it's trying to develop. If these develop out here, most of them are gone in the Central Atlantic Trough. I mean, you got to watch out. You say, hey, it's not developing, it's dead out there. It's like 2013. Okay, you're going to see. And I don't mean to snicker at it, but you've done this long enough. You don't know everything, but you know enough. So this is 92L. Not much to say about it just yet, except keep an eye on it. It's coming in quietly, so to speak. Absolutely see the Saharan air influence on it with these stratocumulus clouds. But it's hanging on. It's trying, and it'll live to fight another day as it moves ever westward over time. The track models for this, tightly clustered, generally west-northwest, north of the islands here. We'll have to see what happens with these upper-level lows, etc. Could be in the vicinity of the southeast Bahamas by day 5, and it'll still be around to talk about, more than likely, the intensity guidance with it. Also, let me get rid of that arrow there. Also, fairly aggressive towards the end, but it's more of a gradual slope. And again, this will just give us plenty of time to watch it and not really worry about it too much. And I think that's the end of all of my tabs. So this was lengthy because there's a lot to talk about. Hopefully, especially for our friends down in the islands, you got what you need to know. And just to recap, tropical storm conditions likely headed your way tonight through tomorrow. Overnight hours will be the problematic time period that this will be happening. So please, those of you who can, alert people in the area to be ready to seek higher ground and watch for flash flooding, etc., as several inches, plural, of rain will be headed your way, and then followed secondarily, in my opinion, the rain is the biggest hazard, in my opinion, and the wind is secondary to that with this system. That being said, certainly gust 50 to 60 miles per hour would not be out of the question, and so people should be ready for that in that area. The good thing is it's moving quickly. All right, like I said, this will be the first of 2 updates today. Next update later this evening. I don't have a specific time yet. Maybe close to the 11 o'clock advisory package as that comes out, 11 p.m. Eastern time, so about 12 hours from now. I think that makes the most sense. People will be up watching, so maybe we'll just do that. All right, that's it from me for now. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Before I say goodbye, let me remind you, I am on Twitter, and I can post quick graphics, blurbs, thoughts, whatever. So follow on Twitter if you haven't done so already. And of course on YouTube you can subscribe and you get notifications when something is posted. Have a great rest of your mid-morning into afternoon, and I'll talk to you later tonight. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk again later tonight.